3 in the morning. Your dog is pacing the bedroom, stomach gurgling, and you already know what happens next. By afternoon, you are standing at a veterinary clinic checkout holding an $80 bag of prescription food that might last 3 weeks. But there is a fix on the bottom shelf of nearly every grocery store in the country. It costs about $2. It has one ingredient, pumpkin. And for a surprising number of dogs, it works overnight. This is the story of how a can of pumpkin became one of the quiet workhorses of canine digestive care, why so few owners know about it, and what the science actually says. Digestive issues are the second most common reason dogs end up at the veterinary clinic in the United States, right behind skin problems. Millions of owners cycle through the same routine every year. The dog eats something it should not have, the stomach falls apart, the vet visit gets booked, and the prescription diet goes on the credit card. Some owners go through it every few months, but the part of this cycle that deserves a closer look is what actually happens inside the veterinary exam room, because it reveals why the $2 fix stays hidden in plain sight. A healthy canine digestive tract moves food through in a rhythmic, predictable pattern. Nutrients get absorbed through the walls of the small intestine. Water gets pulled in and out at the right moments in the large intestine. Bacteria in the colon break down fiber and produce short-chain fatty acids that feed the cells lining the intestinal wall. When this system is running well, your dog's stool is firm, compact, and easy to pick up at the park. When it breaks down, everything goes sideways fast. The trigger is usually something veterinarians call dietary indiscretion. That is the clinical term for your dog eating something it should not have. A piece of greasy chicken skin off the counter, a chunk of rawhide swallowed too fast, something suspicious at the dog park that you did not notice in time. The gut lining gets irritated. The large intestine starts pushing contents through faster than normal, which means water does not get reabsorbed the way it should. Stool turns loose, gas builds up, and the dog starts pacing at 3 in the morning looking for grass to eat. So you call the vet, you pay for the office visit, which runs anywhere from $50 to $150 depending on where you live. The vet examines the dog, maybe runs a fecal test, and then writes a recommendation for a prescription gastrointestinal diet. Now, these diets are not bad products. They are formulated with highly digestible proteins and controlled fat levels. They do work for what they are designed to do. But when you flip the bag over and read the ingredient list on some of the popular brands sitting on the veterinary clinic shelf, you find things like cornstarch, powdered cellulose, and brewer's rice in the top 5 ingredients. For $80 a bag, that raises some fair questions about what you are actually paying for. And the bigger issue is one that rarely gets mentioned during the checkout process. For a large percentage of mild digestive episodes, the dog would have recovered on its own within 24 to 48 hours with a simple intervention, the same intervention that dog breeders, animal shelter workers, and experienced foster families have been using quietly for decades. Plain canned pumpkin, not pumpkin pie filling, which is loaded with sugar and spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. Not pumpkin-flavored dog treats from the pet store, just a 14-ounce can of 100% pure pumpkin puree, the kind that sits next to the pie crusts in the baking aisle of any grocery store and costs somewhere between $1.50 and $2.50. You might be wondering why pumpkin specifically, when there are dozens of home remedies floating around dog owner forums. Bone broth, plain yogurt, slippery elm powder, rice water. All of them get recommended. Some of them help. But pumpkin has something none of the others do, which is the ability to work in both directions. It firms up loose stool and softens hard stool, depending on what the gut needs. That bidirectional quality is rare in any food, and it is the reason pumpkin stayed in the toolbox, while other remedies came and went with trends. The history of how pumpkin became a canine remedy is not glamorous. There was no breakthrough study or famous veterinarian who championed it on television. It spread the way useful knowledge usually does among working animal people, through conversations over kennel runs and whelping boxes. Shelter workers in the 1990s started noticing that dogs transitioning between diets, which happens constantly when animals move through rescue systems, had fewer digestive problems when a spoonful of pumpkin puree was mixed into their food bowls. Breeders raising litters discovered that puppies weaning off their mother's milk had smoother transitions when pumpkin was part of the process. Foster families bringing stressed, newly adopted dogs into their homes found that it calmed digestive flare-ups faster than fasting alone. By the early 2000s, pumpkin had become common knowledge in the working dog community. Trainers mentioned it in passing at obedience classes, breeders printed it on their puppy care sheets, rescue organizations kept cases of it stacked in their supply closets, but it never quite crossed over into mainstream pet ownership the way it probably should have. The reason for that gap is partly economic and partly cultural, and understanding both sides makes the story more interesting. On the economic side, there is very little money in telling a pet owner to buy a $2 can of pumpkin from the grocery store. Prescription diets, on the other hand, are a significant revenue stream for veterinary practices that sell them directly from the clinic. That is not a conspiracy or an accusation. It is just how the economics of veterinary medicine work. Clinics operate on thin margins. Diagnostic equipment, staff salaries, and facility costs are enormous. Therapeutic diets are one of the product categories that help keep the practice financially viable. On the cultural side, veterinarians are trained to think in terms of clinical protocols and evidence-based interventions. Recommending canned pumpkin from the baking aisle does not appear in veterinary school curricula. It is not a prescription. It is not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration for animal use. For a profession that stakes its credibility on science, suggesting a grocery store product can feel uncomfortably informal, even when the results speak for themselves. But the science did eventually catch up with the folk wisdom, and what it found explains why pumpkin works so well in both directions. Pumpkin puree is roughly 90% water and about 7% dietary fiber by weight. That fiber is a mix of both soluble and insoluble types, and this dual nature is the key to why a single food can address opposite problems. When a dog has diarrhea, the soluble fiber in pumpkin absorbs excess water in the large intestine. It forms a gel-like substance that slows the speed at which contents move through the colon, giving the intestinal walls time to reabsorb moisture the way they are supposed to. Stool firms up. The urgency decreases. For many dogs, 1 or 2 doses mixed into a bland meal of boiled chicken and white rice is enough to see a visible change by the next morning. When a dog is constipated, which happens less often but is still a real problem, the insoluble fiber adds bulk to the stool and stimulates the natural muscular contractions of the intestinal wall called peristalsis. Combined with the high water content of the puree itself, it helps move things along gently without the cramping or discomfort that some commercial pet laxatives can cause. And there is a third benefit that researchers have started paying more attention to in the last decade, one that might matter even more than the immediate fix. Pumpkin acts as a prebiotic inside the canine gut. The fermentable fibers feed beneficial bacterial colonies in the large intestine, particularly strains that produce butyrate. Butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid that nourishes the epithelial cells lining the colon wall. A healthier colon lining means better nutrient absorption, a stronger mucosal barrier against pathogens, and a digestive system that bounces back faster the next time your dog inevitably eats something off the sidewalk. That prebiotic effect is the difference between a quick fix and something that actually builds resilience over time. And it is the part of the pumpkin story that even many experienced dog owners do not know about. So, the question dog owners actually care about is what the routine looks like in practice. The first rule is getting the right can off the grocery store shelf. Look for a label that says 100% pumpkin. The ingredient list should have exactly one item on it. If you see sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, or pie filling anywhere on the label, put it back. Some pumpkin pie filling brands contain xylitol, an artificial sweetener that is extremely toxic to dogs. Getting the wrong can is the only danger in this entire process, and it is completely avoidable if you read the label. For dosing, the guideline that veterinary nutritionists generally recommend is straightforward. Small dogs under 20 pounds get 1 to 2 teaspoons mixed into each meal. Medium dogs between 20 and 60 pounds get 1 to 2 tablespoons. Large dogs over 60 pounds get 2 to 4 tablespoons. Mix it directly into their food bowl. If the dog is refusing food entirely, you can offer the pumpkin on its own or stir it into a small portion of plain boiled chicken and white rice. Dogs tend to go for the taste willingly. Pumpkin puree has a mild natural sweetness that appeals to the canine palate without being overpowering or causing further stomach irritation. For an acute episode, the approach looks like this. Skip one meal to give the gut a chance to rest. Then offer a small bland meal with pumpkin mixed in. Repeat that pattern for 24 to 48 hours. In cases of straightforward dietary indiscretion, the kind where your dog raided the trash can or ate too many treats at a friend's house, you will typically see improvement within 12 to 24 hours. What that improvement actually looks like is worth describing, because owners trying this for the first time often do not know what to watch for. The first sign is usually a decrease in urgency. The dog stops asking to go outside every 30 minutes. The stomach gurgling quiets down. By the second or third pumpkin meal, stool starts to take shape again instead of coming out as liquid. By 24 hours, many dogs are back to producing something recognizable in the yard. Full recovery to normal firmness might take another day or two, and that is expected. The gut lining needs time to repair even after the symptoms improve. The one mistake people make is giving too much pumpkin too fast, thinking more will work faster. It does not. Excess fiber in an already irritated gut can cause gas, bloating, and sometimes make diarrhea temporarily worse. Stick to the recommended doses. Patience beats enthusiasm when it comes to digestive recovery. One open can of pumpkin puree stored in the refrigerator with a lid or plastic wrap stays usable for about 5 to 7 days. You can also spoon leftover pumpkin into ice cube trays and freeze individual portions for later use. Some owners keep a rotating stock in the freezer door, so they are never caught unprepared at 3 in the morning with a miserable dog and no options. But this is the part of the conversation that matters more than anything else in this video, because pumpkin has limits, and knowing where those limits are could save your dog's life. Pumpkin is excellent for mild, self-limiting digestive episodes, the kind where a dog ate something weird, got stressed from a car ride or a thunderstorm, or is adjusting to a new brand of food. It is not a replacement for veterinary care when something more serious is happening inside the dog's body. Blood in the stool means a trip to the veterinary emergency clinic, not a spoonful of pumpkin. Diarrhea that continues beyond 48 hours despite intervention needs professional diagnostics. A dog that is vomiting repeatedly, refusing to drink water, showing signs of lethargy or abdominal pain, or a puppy under 6 months old, showing any digestive distress at all. Those situations belong in a veterinarian's hands. Parvovirus, pancreatitis, intestinal obstruction, and parasitic infections all present with digestive symptoms in the early stages. None of them respond to pumpkin, and delaying treatment can turn a manageable condition into a fatal one. The $2 fix is built for the Tuesday night upset stomach, not for the emergency that needs a trained professional with imaging equipment and intravenous fluids. Any source that tells you otherwise is not looking out for your dog. With that boundary clearly drawn, there is a broader conversation worth having about why digestive problems in dogs seem to be more common now than they were 20 or 30 years ago. The pet food industry in the United States has grown into a $60 billion market. The vast majority of dogs eat some form of commercially processed kibble, and while the quality of these products varies enormously from brand to brand, the basic manufacturing process involves extruding ingredients at extremely high temperatures inside industrial machinery. That process is efficient and it creates shelf-stable food that can sit in a warehouse for months. But it also destroys some heat-sensitive nutrients, and it can alter protein structures in ways that make them harder for certain dogs to break down and absorb. There is also the ingredient sourcing question that rarely gets discussed on the packaging. Rendered meat meals, animal byproduct blends, and artificial preservatives are still common in mid-range and budget kibble brands. A dog eating the same formula every day for years is essentially running a long-term experiment on how its gut handles a narrow, highly processed set of inputs. When something disrupts that pattern even slightly, the digestive system often overreacts because it has lost some of its natural flexibility. On top of that, the grain-free diet trend of the 2010s convinced millions of owners that grains were harmful to their dogs. Many of those grain-free formulas replaced wheat and rice with legumes like lentils and peas, which are harder for the canine gut to process. The Food and Drug Administration eventually flagged a potential connection between some of those diets and dilated cardiomyopathy in certain breeds, which added another layer of confusion to an already complicated landscape. The point is not that all commercial dog food is bad. Plenty of dogs live long, healthy lives on well-formulated kibble. The point is that the modern canine diet is more processed and more variable than it has ever been, and that creates more opportunities for digestive disruption along the way. The dogs that tend to have the fewest stomach problems are the ones with the most boring, predictable routines. Same food, same times, same portions, day after day. Transitions between brands happen gradually over 7 to 10 days, not overnight. Table scraps and seasoned human food stay on the human side of the kitchen, and a can of pumpkin puree sits in the pantry for the flare-up that eventually happens anyway, because dogs will always find something on the ground that they should not eat. Consistency does not make for exciting social media content about your dog, but the canine gut thrives on predictability, and the owners who embrace that tend to spend a lot less time and money at the veterinary clinic. A 14-ounce can of pumpkin puree will not replace your veterinarian. It will not cure parvovirus or undo the damage from a chocolate bar your Labrador pulled off the counter on Thanksgiving morning. But for the ordinary digestive episodes that send millions of dogs to the vet every year and generate billions in prescription diet sales, it is a quiet, effective first line of defense. The science supports it. Decades of practical evidence from shelters, breeders, and foster homes support it, and your bank account will notice the difference. The next time your dog's stomach starts making those sounds in the middle of the night, you might not need to reach for the phone. You might just need to reach for the pantry. If you want to understand more about pet care, subscribe to the channel